first thing to talk about. Let me get the big sheet. And then one that Ron, some Ron stuff. Yeah. All right, so first thing, we'll just touch on these when Ron gets here, if there's anything he wants to add. He had asked me to put together information related to the number of building permits issued in the county 1 year prior to and 1 year after the changes to the zoning code that incorporated the new RP zoning districts, that rural preservation zoning district. And so we updated that on July 29th of 2024, so we don't yet have a year's data yet. So it'll be a year at the end of July. Basically, August 1, what I did was look August 1, so right after July 29, 2023, which is a year prior to, up until the time it was adopted, we issued 351 single-family building permits of new homes. And then there is since then, so from August 1st to present, and that's up to today, is 309. And so we're probably running about the same, maybe a little bit ahead. And then there's a spreadsheet right here on the back that tracks that by month for 2023, 2024, and 2025 year to date. That's just calendar years. It gets confusing with government stuff because so much of what we do is fiscal year to date and all that. And so one of the things I try to do as well, to kind of get an apples to apples comparison, I looked at May 1st, 2023 to April 30th, which is the complete month. To April 30th, and then May 1, 2024 to April 30th, which is a full year here. So you can see we're running a little bit ahead this year of where we were a year ago, actually. And so I think probably Ron's question there was, did those changes that we made to the zoning code, did they essentially slow things down, or what was the impact of all those things? And so on paper, the answer to that is no. We're probably a little ahead of where we were a year before. There's a lot of factors at play there. As you guys see, one of the things on the agenda tonight is being deferred, as I mentioned, but there's a lot of older subdivisions that y'all have seen that are existing entitlements that are coming through. Those subdivisions are building out and closing out, basically. So like Laurel Park is an example. That one will be done here in the it'll be done this summer. I don't think there'll be any lots left, so that's one that'll be totally complete. The retreat at Norman Farm will be done this year. Oak Creek Estates, whenever they get that final plat, they'll be building those houses, and that will close out relatively quickly. There's not a whole lot of new stuff in the pipeline. And so I bet a year from today, if you look at the numbers, I think you're going to start to see a real downward trend. I think that building permit revenue next fiscal year is going to be down markedly. And the year after that, very, very markedly based on the existing entitlements. There's not a lot of new entitlements. Now you have people that are doing 5-acre lots and that kind of stuff around the county. And minor plats and stuff like that. So there is still stuff. It's still probably a significant number, but I think there will be a downward trend over the long term. But a year from the day of the adoption, it's hard to capture that. We're not talking about it.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I would have sworn that we were down from especially the first year. And David Wine kept saying, no, we're up. And he was right.
Yeah, he always is. But when it comes to the money, he's always on money, so to speak. And so, but I think what you're going to see, as I mentioned, as those projects are done and they're not online anymore, to be bringing in new permits and that kind of stuff, you will see that downward trend across the county. Unless there's new entitlements that are granted. I don't see a lot of new rezonings coming through that are going to be approved in the next couple of years.
Yeah, one of the things he said is that he thought, well, maybe it's the administratively approved stuff. And you usually have.
There's some of that, and that's some of the stuff, and so that's another factor there too. So I think in the lead up to the big changes a year ago, if y'all remember the list of administrative approvals that we have. Nowadays it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Back then there would be 20-something a month, so we were doing a ton. There were a lot of people that didn't really understand what was proposed. Most of those things could have been done anyway, but they were convinced, and their surveyors were convinced that they'd better hurry and get that done prior to the zoning changes. And so there's a lot of those, a lot of existing things, whether it's existing PUDs, existing big subdivisions, existing little 2-lot minors that they did, you know, that those are entitled and they will continue to build out. It doesn't matter if you go to 50-acre minimum lot sizes today, those ones will still be able to build out. But as those get used up, the new stuff coming in is pretty limited, very, very limited. You know, I'm trying to think of what we got on the horizon. Crutcher Station is one that will continue to build out for the next couple of years. The Brown Mill project.
That's only 32.
But they're right, relatively small. There's one Creekview Estates, you know, Creekview, Johnny Johnson, the one he does has done it on Deshay Creek.
Yeah.
That one's only got a couple lots left, just like maybe less than half a dozen lots left. So that would be done. There's just not a lot of new stuff coming in. So I think you're gonna see a downward trend. It just hasn't hit yet.
You've got a gut feeling on what? Do you think it has to do with our zoning?
No new entitlements. Nothing's been approved of any significance in the last year or two.
Do you think that's a function of the economy?
It's a function of this body. It's a function of this body of the county commission. I mean, just to be blunt with you guys, I mean, you know, it's.
Why would you say that? When you say function, I mean, what is it, what is it, in your opinion, that has caused that downtrend?
Well, I think, one, you're not gonna get a rezoning approved, so like the retreat at Norman Farm, if that came through today, that would be denied. That would certainly, Crutcher Station would certainly be denied. Johnny Johnson's project on the Deshay Creek that I just mentioned, that Creekview Estates, that's a cluster subdivision that's smaller than the minimum lot size. You know, that would almost certainly not be approved today. Most of those things that are building out are things that probably wouldn't be approved. Now, you know, and I think there's some economic factors. There's the high interest rates and that kind of stuff as well. But I do think that, you know, there's probably not a perception among the building, just being blunt with you guys, there's not a perception among the building community that you're going to come here with 100 lots and get a positive reception right now.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather know.
Yeah. And so, you know, and that's not a judgment one way or another, but I think 10 years ago, they would have felt like they had a chance of getting something like that approved. And today, the odds of getting that approved are probably not very good, unless it's by right. And so, and so what you have by right is acre lots, you know, in Allen County, which requires a very substantial investment. To do 100 lots on 1 acre, if you're going to do sewer and all those kinds of things. And so it's not, the money's not there. If you're not going to be able to rezone the property and get density, it's probably not worth the investment. So you'll see smaller stuff. You'll see 4 lots, you'll see, you know, maybe 5 lots, 3 lots. I've had a few pre-app meetings with some surveyors and those folks that are doing, you know, there's a few things in the pipeline that are relatively small, 4 lots, 3 lots, 5 lots, that kind of stuff. You'll still see that kind of stuff, but the stuff of folks saying, we're gonna take a big risk and make a big investment, or try to make a big investment on a piece of property to do 100 lots or 50 lots or 200 lots. There's not a whole lot of that in the pipeline right now.
I see the family number 0.
Yes.
That does surprise me a little bit, especially with all the driving, you know, I don't know how they used to say it, driving. I mean, that's a good word to use. And the phone calls, and the name calls. And so I was, you know, I thought, boy, this was going to be really bad for the families. And we took it. That's right when I came on. I said, well, we're looking at this and everything. And so, and now 0. So it's like, why?
Well, on that, I think there's a few reasons for that. One, the number of, you know, y'all have seen this at the planning commission level with surveyors come, you know, they want you to have variance for something or whatever. There's typically a story that's associated with that that's crafted to tug on your emotions and that kind of stuff. It's a business. This is a business. And so most of the time people are not partitioning lots in a way that it genuinely is just for family members for the next 100 years, right? That's not really what, it's not that it never happens, but, you know, but it's not, most of the time that's not what's going on. And so with the way that the family subdivision process works, it really gives you an exemption from all the zoning stuff, pretty much. You can do acre lots anywhere in the whole county, but there's a restriction on it that you can't sell it, except to a family member. And so that's something that's, you know, that clouds the title on
Now,
these rights.
passing family property is not so important.
Wonder if adoptions are
Adoption. It actually is
to
in
be
there.
part of family.
It's defined as a family member, it's defined as an adoptee, yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Well, that's good to have, that's good to know, because
We may actually have our first, though. I think Kathy and Sydney had a conversation with somebody a few days ago where they are very seriously considering pursuing that process. And so it's not bad that it's out
and
there.
I bet it's in the, she
What was it, do you remember what that was?
I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
Is it the Castaic Springs?
It's, I think that, yeah, it's,
North of the bridge.
right.
You know?
maybe.
We got a strong family contact.
We reach out, we get concerned citizens, ask for some guidance and education. And people are really wanting, they have their options.
I noticed that they came in and they knew a whole lot about it, and then you asked me about it around the same time. I was like, that's not coincidental. Like, Ron must be educating the public. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we want people to execute their options.
And
This
it's
is a
out there.
great option
Right.
for somebody. Yeah, okay, great.
Well, this is great information.
So that was just for Ron. And Ron, there's a spreadsheet on the back that breaks it down by month. I don't know if you saw that. And so if there's anything else you need, just let me know. And then 3,
Can
Ron.
I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the reason I want this is really more for the commissioners is the issue is, in my opinion, is that if we go back and look at resolutions that are started and passed by the full commission, I believe that it's important that we go back and look at resolutions that was adopted and see if they're effective or not. If they're not, we need to gut them out and kill it. So many times we keep putting rules and code on the books, and then it conflicts down the road with, well, 21 years ago we did this, and I would like to at least, share that we take a look at this, and if it's not effective, then we go back and say, you know what, maybe we need to relook at the 2.3 acres. Maybe we should have went with 5 acres. Because I'm not seeing no reduction. I guess, without being political about it, when we have resolutions that's passed, we want to greatly see a change. I'm not seeing a change with this. So it tells me we may have failed as leaders to correctly come up with the right resolution, because the resolution is about reducing growth in Sumner County.
Well, I think that to that point, yeah.
Speed.
Right, well, so there's that, but what it's also, what I think, this is just me talking, I'm not going to vote on any of this, but some of it is, if you set, wherever you set the standards at in Sumner County, eventually the money is there, the property's valuable enough that somebody will be able to do it, you know what I mean? And so it is, what you said, I don't doubt that is a key intention, but it's also deciding what is an appropriate use in certain parts of the county. What do you want those parts of the county to look like? What's the vision for that? It's not necessarily like, like stopping something, but saying, here's what we do want to happen. And so when you've got a situation like we have in Sumner County and the rest of Middle Tennessee, where if you say it's 2.3 acre minimum lot size, the market will accommodate that. It will accommodate that. And so people gripe about it, complain about it, but I think what's going on right now is they're getting their arms around what it means, and is it going to stay around, and is this going to be what we have to live with? And people will do it. The market, if they can still make money, they will do it. And so I think like I said, there's not a lot of big stuff coming down the pipeline right now, but I think eventually you'll see the development community get their arms around that, you know, in that part of the county, and that's what you will see. And so if that is what y'all want to see, because we went through about a year of discussion, you know, looking at that, if that is what y'all want to see, then, you know, but we are updating the comp plan, so if there's something that y'all feel like is appropriate in a revised comp plan, and I hope we'll be able to get to that either during the study session or at the end of the meeting if it's not blowing us away out.
I appreciate you bringing that up because that's something that we definitely need to take a look at. Almost to where, in my vision, I'd like to see it to where it's an automatic. It's automatically 1 year or X number of months until the time the resolution is passed, that we have to take an unbiased look at the data and say, did it make a difference? If it did, we're going to go back and either we didn't do it properly or it's just not needed. There was a political cloud that came by.
Well, and sometimes it's how you look at it too. And so, like what we were discussing there, the number of permits issued in the last year, that might not be a reflection on that zoning change at all. Because you had things that have been approved, like we're talking about the retreat on farm, all those are the development in any county. It's like turning the battleship around, right? It takes a little time.
Crutcher Station.
Right,
They
exactly.
started it back in
there
the,
forever.
the Iron Age?
You live with the decisions of previous boards.
The economy could affect it, interest rates could affect it.
That's right. And so you might need to think about what are the metrics we want to use? And so is it the number of building permits issued? Over time, yes, I think that'll tell you a whole lot, but short term in 1 year, it might be the number of lots platted, like new lots created, like that kind of thing. Like if we looked at that a year ago versus this year, what would that be? And that could tell you a whole lot more probably about what you're going to see in the future.
Well, I can tell you that I'm watching a really interesting A/B test right now in Brandon Mill Road because Steve Brooks's project was done before we became commissioners. So that would have been in 2021 or 2022. Those are 1 acre lots. He took 6 5-acre lots and turned them into 26 1-acre lots. He's still maybe only sold half of those.
Well, and see, and that's the other thing too. So there's another factor, that developer intentions. So sometimes you'll have builders who are like, hey, we're going to get these 20 lots sold, and we're going to get the 20 lots platted or approved, and we're going to be selling them the next day. Mr. Brooks is one that it's not that he's piddling, but in conversations with him, he needs to keep his crews going.
So he's not in a big hurry.
No, and so
The Shell Brothers, the 23, they're gone.
right. They've got investors. They've got people to keep happy. It's a business, and it's a business for guys like Mr. Brooks too. But he's a guy that can sit on those lots and use them as his business deems it appropriate. And he's always got them sitting back there. No matter what happens here, if you're a guy like a real small scale builder that's got 20 lots sitting back there, so you will continue to see those permits coming in for years, even though they got approved a long time ago. Before I started, a lot of those.
Well, I think I'm going to go talk to Shell Brothers and see the chronological order of the sales versus acreage, because they've got 3 1-acre lots and they've got 2 5 to 6 acre lots, and I think in the back by the creek, maybe
Back there,
some big ones, maybe like a 9-acre lot.
much bigger back there.
And so, but they're all gone, and that's almost the same amount as Brooks, and they've sold them in a year, and Brooks.
He's come by the office and talked about it some, and I can't speak for him, but I think his intention is that he just sells them as he feels like it, as he either needs to work for his guys or somebody who wants to sell one or whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Mr. Straw, the third thing that you requested was you wanted to revisit flag lots and flag stems. I've had a conversation with Mr. Klein. I've had a conversation with Mr. Miller on flag lots and all that. That became a big conversation last month, if y'all remember. So I handed this out here. And so I don't want to beat the dead horse on some of this because I know some of you guys have heard me talk about this before. But there's a conversation to be had in terms of what we can do. Some of that I don't really know, to be honest with you. That we'll have to work with the law office to figure out the bounds of our authority. But what we can do is figure out what y'all would like to do, what you'd like to accomplish. So the first thing to talk about is, with me, it always goes back to, what does the law say? What does state law say about dividing up lots, right? And so this is Title 13, Chapter 3, Part 4, which governs regional planning subdivision regulations. So this is in the definitions. And I've got a section, it's this B1. I'll make myself busy. B1. What that means, for some reason, the way they did it is that this subdivision A is only for one county, and I don't even know what county it is, but it's some county that had 32,000 people in 1980, so whoever that was. Subdivision B means everybody else. So the other 95 counties, minus any that have private acts, like Shelby County. And it defines what a subdivision is. So this is very important to us when we look at how lots are partitioned and looking at what you guys have authority to regulate as a planning commission via your subdivision regulations. So what the law says is a subdivision in all counties except this one up here, wherever they are, the division of a tract or parcel of land into 2 or more lots, sites, or other divisions requiring new street or utility construction, or any division of less than 5 acres for the purpose of building something. Okay, so parsing that out, what that's saying is if you create any lot less than 5 acres in Sumner County's jurisdiction, that has to be platted. You have to file a subdivision plat prepared by a professional land surveyor with my office. It has to be approved either by me if it's 1 or 2 lots, or by the planning commission if it's more than 2 lots. That whole 2-lot, 3-lot thing, that's in a different section, so I won't get into that right now. But basically, less than 5 acres, you got to plat it. It's subject to the subdivision regulations, which is a separate document that we have, and you got to plat it. And then the exception to that, though, is if I'm building a new road, like, what was the 5-acre development that they did, where it was all 5-acre tracts, they built a new road. Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was Smith.
That Marcus did, yeah, Marcus Smith. It was
Like
Lauderdale Land.
Homer, yeah.
Lauderdale Land. So that one was over 5 acres, right? Normally 5-acre lots, you don't plat those, but it involved the construction of a new road and the extension of a water line, and so it had to be platted. So they platted those 5-acre lots. But if you're dividing up a tract, something into 5-acre lots, that does not involve the extension of a new water line, or like public water line, not service lines, but a new water lines or sewer line or a new public road, you don't have to plat that, is what state law says. And that's how you end up with these. And so we had a lot of discussion about this last month with these kind of strange flag lots.
Well, what we see there, and you, as you stated, and I appreciate you bringing it to the committee last month, this is just on paper, what the eventual roads look like in there is not nothing like.
Right.
And they're private,
Yeah.
which means truthfully, 50 years down the road, the county might take it over because residents are wrong.
It is possible. I think inevitably the county will be asked to do so. Whether or not the county will, I don't know. We haven't done it in a long time. Used to do it a lot, but haven't done it in a long time. And one thing that also I would guarantee is that they will fight about it a lot. they will feud about it because those private access drives have a lot of maintenance issues. And so to go back to that, so what it says, let's read what it really says. So division into 2 or more lots, or divisions requiring new street or utility construction. New street, right? So it doesn't say public street, it says new street. So the courts have ruled that means any street. Practice in Rutherford County, Sumner County, Wilson County, most counties, I've looked at a bunch of different zoning regulations recently just to see how we compare, is that we don't take quite that hard of a stance. If you construct a new public road, we're going to require it to be platted. These private access drives, we tend to try to stay out of them because they're a procedural mess, and they end up with the county somehow or another being responsible for a dirt road through these 5-acre tracts. And so we had interpreted that new street to be new public street.
And it can be dirt road, it can be gravel.
Whatever they want to do. Yeah, that's basically, we don't regulate it, what we do require in order to issue permits on these things, when you have a road that meanders through all these 5-acre lots, is some kind of a shared driveway agreement showing that everybody has the right to use that road, because you're essentially trespassing if you don't drive across those roads. And so, all right, so that's what state law says. Any division of 5 acres or less, right? And so that's governed by your subdivision regulations, right? So those are your regulations that govern the partitioning of property less than 5 acres. And so these flag lots, that's something that's been an issue in Sumner County for a very long time. But the county really, in a regulatory way, started getting involved with it back in the 90s. And they did a lot of stuff that's kind of unclear, went back and forth on it. When I started, there was some rule about not having over a certain number in the subdivision, but there was no real standards. And so you'd have these flag lots that would come through that would go in different directions, and it would be a mile long and these other things. And so what happened was, this is back in maybe, I'd have to look back to when it was put in, but I want to say it was like 2021 or thereabouts. 2020 or 2021, we really dramatically amended the flag lot regulations. And I think maybe we've amended them since the new commission came in a little bit as well. And we imposed very specific requirements for flag lots. And so there's even like a finding of fact on this to say the planning commission finds that these things cause problems. So state law said, there's something in state law that talks about the planning commission's ability to prohibit scattered or premature development. And so the argument was that, hey, if you're having to do flag lots, you're probably developing an area that isn't ready to be developed yet, because you're not willing to build roads to take care of it and to do the kind of things that need to be done. And so you're coming up with all these weird lot configurations. And so we can regulate that, and we find that they impede emergency access, impede school bus, mail, public utilities, and create conflicts among property owners. And so we therefore, Planning Commission established the following requirements for flag lots. And so again, these are subdivision regulations, right? So they only apply to lots 5 acres or less, or partitions of property that involve construction of a new road, a new public road, or extension of utilities. 99% of the time, that means all the lots are less than 5 acres, or at least most of them. So one, first requirement is, hey, you got to show how you demonstrate compliance. B, Planning Commission doesn't do variances on these, and so we had to add that in because even though we had the regulations, we kept having the sob story type things coming to the Planning Commission, where you'd have 5 variances at the meeting, and the Planning Commission would deny every one of them, and eventually they kind of put something in there that says, hey, we're not going to do variances anymore on these things. It's like, if you think staff is wrong about this, then you can appeal to us. So then there's some really specific requirements, right? So basically no more than 20% in a major subdivision can be a flag lot. All flag lots have to have 50 feet of physical road frontage. Flag stems can't be longer than 500 feet. See, y'all get what I'm saying when I talk about the flag stem? That's that skinny piece that goes to the building site. We talked about how we measure flag stems, because there's always a lot of question about that. One intervening lot or tract is allowed. So what that means is I'm coming off the road, I can have one block between the building site along that flag stem. There can be one in between. Not like something like this where you have maybe 4 or 5, right? F, they can't change directions or more than one time, and you can't have situations where the flag is, like we would literally have somewhere that they'd come off the road, the flag stem would do this, it would come back up almost to the road, then back down again, and then, these kinds of really strange things. So we basically cut all that out. You can have one straight line up to the road, pretty much is what you can do. Have to provide safe, reasonable access. So that means you can't have your flag stem going over a pond. We used to see that a lot where you couldn't actually drive across it through a building. That used to happen sometimes. They had a flag stem going through a building. We cut that out. Across requirements for flag lots and platted lots, right? So, and it works real well. I mean, if y'all will notice, y'all see a whole lot of these, and the ones you see are usually relatively straightforward. That one last month had a lot of peripheral issues, but it wasn't hard to parse out those two little lots that was being proposed. And so the question, and this is a question that Commissioner Klein has had, I speak with him, and Commissioner Miller as well. Okay, so that's for lots under 5 acres. What can we do? What can we do about this? Is there any way to apply these regulations? And so this only applies to lots that are being subdivided by that state law, what a subdivision is, right? And so these, you can't necessarily put that in subdivision regulations. What can you put? What's your other big regulatory document? Is your zoning. So your zoning regulations. And so what our zoning regulations say, this is something that my staff uses every single day, talking to people. We live and die by this. It really is something that's probably the most used part of our zoning code, to be honest with you. What it says is, so the first paragraph is a little bit of a red herring. It says, no building shall be erected unless the lot has 50 feet of physical road frontage, or 30 feet if it's on a cul-de-sac. End of paragraph, right? That's pretty easy. That's exactly what our subdivision regulations say too. You can't have an easement to a platted lot. But the next paragraph says, hey, but this doesn't apply to lots over 5 acres. So this has all been on the books since 1980, just to clarify that. It's pretty much the same as it was back then. So the section doesn't apply to lots over 5 acres whose access is provided by a private easement. And it goes on to say, when that permanent easement is used as access, at no point shall it be less than 50 feet wide, and such easements shall not be used to provide access to more than one lot or instead of a tract of land having been separated by deed from another property. So what that means is you can't share easements. So when you look at these, that's the surveyor map that they do, where each lot somehow or another either has 50 feet of road frontage, which satisfies this, or an easement that it doesn't actually share with anybody else, so a paper easement. So each lot has its own independent road access. And they have to, there's some stuff in there about how they have to prove that it meets that requirement. Because sometimes we can't parse it out with the deed, it's just too complicated. So that's when we get a boundary survey done. And then there's some stuff about private roads that I won't necessarily get into, but it's like gated subdivisions that doesn't necessarily apply. If we have a PUD that's approved by the county commission. And so the question I think that you guys that I have been asked, and I think that y'all have probably asked yourselves is, okay, so we can do all this with our platted lots. What can we do with these? What can we do here? Like what can we start requiring? And so it goes back to the state law, right? So the state gives you the things that you can and can't do. I know I beat y'all to death about that Dillon's rule stuff. You can only do what you're specifically authorized to do. And so we have very specific things that we can do. Obviously, we have the ability through our subdivision regulations to regulate how property is partitioned in almost any way that we want to, because you have very broad discretion. No two subdivision regulations in the state are the same. And so everybody has the right to do it a little differently.
That's regardless of the size of the lot.
That's 5 acres or less.
5 acres.
Yeah, that's in your subdivision regulations. Now, your zoning code, what does state law say about lots over 5 acres and how you can partition them? It says nothing. Doesn't say anything at all other than each lot that is to be created has got to have some kind of an access to a road. And so what it says is that could mean onto a public road, or it could be to an easement, it could be an easement access to an easement. There's these things there's another section of state law that I can find if y'all want to look at it, that talks about all that. But basically it doesn't really give us any guidance other than to say some kind of an access has to be provided to all lots. It doesn't really even say 5 acre lots. So there's no explicit authority for us to come in and create a new set of standards for these lots over 5 acres in our zoning code, like we have for the 5 acre lots. And that was where I was talking about I've got to get with the law office to figure that out, because I'd hope to find somebody, even like Williamson County or somebody that's very regulation heavy, that maybe has some kind of a set of standards on that. And there's really not much. There's not any jurisdiction that I've been able to find, and I may have just not looked in the right spot, where they've taken what we've got in our our subdivision regulations and said, hey, we're gonna apply that, all these requirements for flag lots, we're gonna apply that to 5 acre lots too. We're gonna put it in the zoning code, and we're gonna make it apply to every lot that gets created in Sumner County. I think what you could do probably, you could probably say, each lot in the county, starting, provide an effective date, you know, January 1st, 2026. Every lot created after that time has to have 50 feet of physical road access. No easements, right? Each lot has to have its own road access. I think you can do that. I think that's not an unreasonable requirement. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know, because if you say, hey, the flag's can only be 500 feet, I don't know if there's, because from a planning perspective, that would be ideal. Don't get me wrong. I think that, you know, if I said, hey, yeah, you know, 500 feet on this is this far, right? And so what that means is if you want to access these lots back here and build on them, you've got to build a public road back here, is really what we'd be saying. That would be ideal. So I'm not making like a personal argument on this. I just don't know if there's anything in the law that lets us do that. And so I've got to continue my research to see what we can do there. There's other counties that I believe that come up and have said no more easements. The easement stuff is killing us, and it's administratively very difficult. And so you got to show in your deed, you know, a matter survey that you have 50 feet of physical road access. I think that can be done. That's a zoning code change where we could amend this, and I think everybody would just have to deal with it. You couldn't retroactively apply it to lots that already have been created that somebody has bought already. And then when I was talking to you, David, I'm talking with Chris as well, you know, the nightmare scenario is where you have some surveyor that doesn't know what the requirements are. And again, none of this has to go to the planning commission, right? Because they're all over 5 acres. It's exempt from planning review. The nightmare scenario is where you have somebody where we put a set of really, really strict requirements in, the surveyor doesn't know this or something like that. Somehow or another it gets done, the lots get sold. Somebody's paid $200,000 for a 5 acre lot somewhere in the county, and they come into our office and we say, oh, I'm sorry, that's not a buildable lot. You know, and then you really can get into, and then let's say there's 10 or 15 more folks that have done the same thing, then you really can get into a situation. So
You've got to get calls about these property owners just disgruntled with each other. I mean, I get, and it's horror stories. I mean, people, prominent people, I mean, successful people that come up here, they move from exotic places like California and decide to grow roots here, and then next thing you know, they're really nice people until they get irritated. And now residents are mad at each other. In other words, we just created a real problem. And the next thing you know, they're calling the commissioners. Commissioners can't do really anything about it because auctioneers come in and won't mention no names, but they do this because they know the law. And when you said planning commission, not because the planning commission, because of 5 acres, I got that. But we need to probably entertain and/or. In other words, the state is specific on the size of property. It's quiet on everything else. So why can't we, Sumner County Commission, say anything over 5 acres, if it has this additional items, it has to come before the planning commission. So that way you're not conflicted against state law.
what those other
Flag lots. Any flag lot, period. If there's any lot that has a flag lot, it has to mandatorily come before the planning commission.
Well, and again, from a planning perspective, and from my department's perspective, that would be ideal. Like, and so I guess take solace in the thought that every county in the state, other than maybe Shelby, David, Southern, those, is dealing with this exact same issue too. And so it's not something this is not in any way unique to Sumner County. This is something that everybody grapples with. But the question would be, and it has to be on everything that we do, is where is the authority for the county commission to be able and it might just be in the zoning authority in general. We have the ability to zone property and regulate lot sizes and those things, and so maybe we can just do that. But where's the statutory authority to do it? I think is the
Well,
big
I
question.
think we need to go back and look at the statutory authority of the original planning commission. I brought this up numerous times today, but there's a huge difference between a planning commission and a regional planning commission.
Absolutely.
People are not getting it. The regional, this committee here has a lot of authority that cannot even be regulated by the commissioners or by the mayor because we are a regional planning commission. I think we need to execute that authority. I really do. I think we need to take time and look at, and not as a power play at all, but
Well,
as a look.
it's a life safety. I mean, it really is.
There's a reason, there's a difference between regional. You pass counties, regional planning commissions, they go over county lines. I mean, it's that important that you work with the surrounding area. So I think that's something that we need to take a look at. Because we get called about, well, we don't get called, we get trapped in saying, well, the state code says this. Well, yeah, but 99% of all the other factors involved in that tract of land, the state is quiet about. Why don't we address those areas?
Well, lawyers, so, and this is the question I have, is maybe a Dylan's rule thing. So if a statute is silent on a county authority, what does that imply?
The county only gets what the statute provides.
So
That's a good statement to remember.
it's an absent explicit authority. You generally have
Yeah.
none, right? Is that a fair thing to say?
Everything is prohibited except for what is permitted.
Yeah, okay, I got that, and we go and look at the regional planning commission authority that is by state statute, and it's gonna enlighten us.
Okay. And so, if you remember that thing that I pointed out here about scattered and premature.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
So, I like to hit on the authority there because the Sumner County Regional Planning Commission found that their flag lots are characteristic of scattered or premature development. That's in quotation marks. And so that's taken out of the statute for the authority and the powers of the Regional Planning Commission. So that's, you're driving in the right direction, I think, at the Planning Commission. But it's so, that's a nebulous, there's some nebulous stuff in all those powers that are granted to the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying again, I'll have to work with the law office, to talk to them about where the boundaries of our ability. Because I would love to just say, hey, in Sumner County, these flag lot standards we have for platted lots, those apply to everybody. That would be like a dream come true for our office, it really would. But I don't know whether we have the authority to do it. And I really don't. That's not me being devil's advocate. I don't know where the extent of that authority is.
Well, to understand authority, you have to know the authority.
Have you ever done a deep dive into the difference between a planning commission and a regional planning commission? Where do we find that?
Right here. So when we say the planning commission, there's 2 or 3 different, 4 actually, types of planning commissions in the state of Tennessee. So, let's see, we go to Title 13. Almost everything that we deal with in this body is a Title 13 of the Tennessee Code.
Okay.
And so, there's, and then the code, Title 13, Chapter 4, there's municipal planning, right? So there's municipal planning commissions. And so all the planning commissions in Sumner County right now are municipal planning commissions. And so what that means is they only have the authority within the city limits. Up until 2021, they were all municipal regional planning commissions, which is another type of planning commission. That meant they had jurisdiction outside the city limits within their planning region. So they had zoning power and they had planning power, which was like planning. They could do subdivision plans outside city limits. That all went away in 2020. The county took zoning back, and in 2021, the cities all abandoned their planning regions, and they all became municipal planning commissions, which gave the county about 60 or 70 square miles of new territory to regulate when they did that. So type 1 and type 2 planning commission. And then there's community planning commission, which is something that's been in the statute for a very long time that has never, to my knowledge, been actually used. That's like a planning commission for an unincorporated area. And so there's a theoretical authority that those folks have. I don't know that it's ever been utilized. I said there's some training a while back that said that they had never actually done it. So that's your third type. And then your fourth type is your regional planning commission. So there is no county planning commission, right? There's regional planning commissions. And most of the time that implies a county planning commission or one of those municipal commissions designated as a regional planning commission. So that was what those powers were. So powers and functions is this. This is about how the planning commission gets created. So they all were created by the Department of Economic and Community Development years ago. How it's organized, talks about hiring a planning director, who hires and fires a planning director, all that stuff. Then powers of the planning commission is here. So this is one of the areas. It looks like there's some more too, though. So it is a duty of the regional planning commission to promote the mutual cooperation of the municipalities. What does that mean? You know, that's some of the thing. So there's nothing else in the statute that spells out what that means, how we're supposed to promote it. But essentially functionally what that means is that I'm the guy that has to set up the meeting. so sometimes when a state agency or something like that wants to meet with all the planners in Sumner County, I'm the point of contact that they reach out to get the meeting set up. That's what that means a lot. And in practice a lot of the time. That could be a lot. Coordination of the plans with the plan of the region. Confer with and advise municipal and county mayors and legislative bodies for the purpose of promoting a coordinated and adjusted development of the region. That's a big authority. Any such commission may also advise county and municipal legislative bodies with respect to the formulation of public improvement programs and the financing of the programs. So what that means is
Regional water project.
yes,
That's right?
yeah, oh yeah.
We have an authority, we have an authority. The regional water project, that's Tennessee State Code allows us to basically provide oversight
What?
and advise
Yeah.
county and municipal
So
legislative bodies.
I think definitely advise.
Yes,
Oversight, I don't know, but certainly you have the right to weigh in. And so if the county's proposing a new road project or something like that, the county, this body absolutely has the right to consider that and discuss it and to make a recommendation or offer advice to the governing body.
I agree with that.
Also may cooperate with the planning, legislative, or executive authorities of neighboring states, regions, counties, and municipalities for promoting coordination.
But that's huge. That's huge. There is no such thing as we're staying out of this. But if it incorporates something that's out reaching different cities, reaching cities and county, then we should be part of that process. By the way,
I think that's the intent of the law.
yeah, I do. I believe it's intent of the law. Now I know everybody why I get so many phone calls. I just is that as I was pulling this up, looking at chapter, you call it chapter. Is it chapter article? Is it article?
Chapter 3, Part 104.
Section 13.
Title.
Title 13. I knew I was looking for it. So I pulled Tennessee, Tennessee County government website up, and I looked at our commission and how we're authorized, and that's exactly what you said. But I did notice all our members are here, which is nice and neat. And Ron Straw is the only one that has a phone number.
That's by design.
Where's that at?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
our website or is
Your
it?
website, Ron Straw, it's his personal cell phone, you know. And
I'm not offended.
I'm not offended either. I mean, I'm smiling, but I'm
Is there a
just
vote to
saying.
make him the official?
No wonder you're getting all the
Your point is?
My point is, people are calling.
Well, that keeps it central
supervised, and that way we know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just let us know
You
when
can
you're
come
here.
We will take a look at
I
that.
just want us.
I'm good with
You're the
it.
designated switchboard.
I'm not upset or anything.
Great.
I'm not upset at all. I'm not upset at all.
Keep phone
I
lines.
have to maybe talk to John about
Josh, you know, based on reading that,
Oh, that's good stuff.
there's a lot in that paragraph.
There is, and to go back to the scattered and premature, I'm trying to remember where I got that from, I think it's here in the regulations. So this is the section that deals with subdivision regulations, right?
Mhm.
Let's see. Right. Yeah. I love, this is, a lot of things was written in the 30s, and they used to be long paragraphs back then. And so, let's see. Well, nomination. Training and education.
So while you're looking, Josh, Ron's point on his phone number, that doesn't mean that all of our numbers are gonna be published tomorrow, does it?
Equal opportunity.
Yeah, we're going to do a Facebook post.
Contact Ron Charles, all your questions.
The new survey, who do you want to be the point of contact?
Yeah.
All right, well, anyway, I think we made the point there, but the point I was trying to drive at is I don't know where the bounds of our authority are and what we can do about that problem. I mean, I think if y'all want to have new language get put in there that gets rid of the easements and makes it so you can't get building permits on easements anymore, probably can do that for sure. But get in there and doing things that are much more significant with the lots over 5 acres gets into some legal territory that I need to work with the law office on to figure out what they feel like we can do. And I had handed this out to you guys just for you to read. David, you had mentioned it to me a few days ago, so I wanted to kind of close the loop on it. So there was a proposal in Montgomery County to increase the minimum lot size of a chunk of their county to 5 acres. And they're still working on it basically, but it was tabled. So anyway, that was just an update on that.
But the difference was, this is the county that had just finished their new comprehensive.
That's right, yeah, they just finished their comp plan. They're currently working on updates to the zoning code, like we talked about, you want to get your zoning code and your comp plan into alignment, so they're working on that. And I think they kind of come out of left field a little bit with something that's probably a change to the comp plan we recommend, and so.
Yeah, putting it backwards.
Right, yeah, that's probably a proposal that would have been much more, beneficial for the staff to have gotten a year or two ago.
Well, what I'd like to explore, and I'm going to study that Tennessee law, because Ron and I have talked about, but I've never looked at it hard because there hasn't been time, but I wonder if there's, because we are a municipal planning commission, regional planning commission, that we have been vacating some of the authority that we should be taking. I don't know. That's one of those things that I'll probably have to talk to you about and talk to the attorneys about and see, because, you know, one of the things we're fighting, obviously, is the densities that are coming from the municipalities. And if we have authority there, perhaps we want to exercise it. And I don't know that we do really. Yeah, but since we are regional, and I guess what that would mean is those municipals kind of fall under our umbrella, or do they?
I wouldn't go that far. I think that there is an advisory capacity that this body has to everybody. Basically to the way it reads, that's to the municipal bodies, that's to whoever. So, you know, like an example might be an annexation. The city's going to do an annexation. does this body have a right to weigh in on that? Maybe. I mean, I think there's, because it talks about coordination of plans and activities and that kind of thing out in with the various municipalities. Do you have the right to look at that and weigh in on it? I think maybe, yeah, but do you have the right to vote on it and to tell them what they should and should not do? Probably not. Probably not. There's not an authority to do that.
Yeah. Point, without going into details, in the recent past, this part of this body showed up at city building, where they had a council meeting. And we were refused the opportunity to speak. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, we went from here to the city of Gallatin. We got there just after they had finished public comments. Pascal Johannes made a motion that was seconded to let the planning commissioners from the county speak, and it was denied. And so.
Exactly. Like I just said, they won't listen.
They what?
I just said they won't listen, so it's.
I think we have the
Well,
authority.
but that's where I'm trying to interrupt, but that might be a situation where, you know, and not to defend the city or anything, that's not my intent here, but in order to run an orderly meeting, they do have to abide by our rules and public hearings and all that stuff. And so a timely request to the city, you know, ahead of time to say, hey, we would like an opportunity to do that. I think, you know, there's some stuff in the law that allows you to, if nothing else, to send them a memo or maybe even a resolution or something like that, you know.
We were completely cut out of the Swift water program too. And if, you know, Ron and I haven't been nosy, the first time we showed up a meeting, the looks on their faces were, what are you guys doing? Didn't you feel that way, Ron?
Absolutely. In fact, I was asked if I was going to personally pay for something. If I was going to pay for the pump house, you know, I thought that was interesting.
So, yeah, I'm going to look into that and be ready for questions.
But I think it offers you the ability to advise, certainly, and offer advice. I don't know if it offers you the authority to storm into a meeting and demand the right to.
No,
right. Yeah, I'm not sure it does that, but certainly there's authority there for you guys to review what's going on in this county as a whole and offer everything, for sure.
All right, well, I'm going to call this work session done, and we're going to start at 5:05.
Nice touch.
Huh?
Nice touch.
We got a gavel. Yeah, that was a special one.
I like it.
And I know how. Okay, I'm going to bring this meeting to order. It's 5:06 on Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. And Mr. Belcher, would you please do the invocation?
Sir? Father God, we, Lord, come before you, Father, and just ask for your guidance, ask for your direction. Lord, we invite your Holy Spirit to come and hover over us, Lord. Father, we want to do what's right by our fellow citizens, Lord, do what's right by the law, because I know that you never broke the laws when your son was here, Father, yet look at what you accomplished. Father, we just thank you and praise you, Father. We ask you to be with us during this meeting, Father, and bless everyone that's here. Keep us safe as we return to our homes, Lord, and we just thank you and praise you, Father, in your precious Son's name. Amen.
Mr. Stroll, you lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I would entertain either corrections to the minutes or approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Holmes. Any corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Approved unanimously. And now, would entertain approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I did have one change to the agenda.
Okay.
Item 3, Oak Creek Estates Phase 2, they're not ready to go on that final plat yet. They're still waiting to get the road to the full substantial completion that we require. And so they have requested the deferral.
Okay.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then we're going to, we only have 2 items and they're basically the same item. And we will go ahead and get the rundown from the planning director and then we will get public comment on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda is Cranes County Marker PUD Track 2 site plan. This is a 10-acre piece of this 40-acre tract shown here. The property is zoned planning and development, and that rezoning was approved. This body will remember it came through last year. It was approved by the county commission in September 2024. Proposed use of construction sales and services, which is allowed by the concept plan rezoning that was done. The project consists of the construction of 2 structures, so a 6,000 square foot shop and office and a 2,400 square foot shed, equipment storage shed, with parking and landscape improvements. The developer is Jerry Crane Lawn Care LLC. Greenlit Design is the project representative and designer. Mr. Lee is here this evening to represent the project. These proposed structures has been communicated to us and shown on the plan that they will house the TriStar Excavation LLC company. And we have a note there. In general, we do have comments, a few comments here and there. The county engineer sent some comments in recent days, so there'll be another round or 2 of plan revision before they get stamp approval from the county engineer. But in general, this property appears to be in substantial compliance with the concept plan that's approved by the county commission and our site plan requirements in general. This is the subject property with the star showing the approximate location of the use. So there's a flood zone here that's depicted. It should be noted that all the improvements and buildings and everything are supposed to be located outside of that floodplain area. This is the BUD concept plan. Again, on the overall track, if you everybody remember, it's 4 tracks. Track 1, 2, 3, and 4 is set aside essentially as open space, pasture area. And so this is the property where the track 2, where this is both. This is just another sheet showing that in a little more detail. And this is the concept plan showing the landscape layout. Of course, we're not requiring any landscape buffer between on these lot lines here because it's all part of the same development. And so there's no screening. There are plans for both along the road and the detention area in the back. That wasn't shown on the concept plan, but it is on the site plan. This is the boundary survey that was done. So here's lot 2 with all the stakes or the pins and everything been set out there for these parcels. This is the site plan for the property. You see the buildings and the parking. Again, this is a very, very large tract here, so it's good preserved area is set aside on all these tracts and this one as well. A little closer view here. You see one access on Sky Park Road, post sign here, HVAC location depicted, tar and chip surface, parking here around back. Does have attention shown, visual structures here on the drainage plans. We'll come up in a second. I'll show you those. This is along Sky Park Road, which, as you guys know, is the old Highway 109. So that was a major arterial roadway in the county for 50 years or more. It's been replaced by a new Highway 109. So essentially, you got the same roadway here with way less traffic on it today than what it had 20 years ago. So it runs along 2 County Roads, Prairie Lane, and Old Douglas. They're not, no access is proposed or would be allowed on either road. So on the old state road, it's only access, this is proposed. And looking at it as we have since back when there was the rezoning came last year, this is State Harbor Road is active with good sight distances in both directions to accommodate this use. So they did provide a pre-generation report. Traffic impacts are not significant, and no additional improvements or study will be required. Track 2, per the trip generation report, will generate 8 peak-hour trips per day. So 100 is what we look at threshold for a traffic study. Generally more than that is where you get into traffic improvements and that kind of thing. Again, this is a well-built former state road. So, this is where that's at. See, 4 a.m. to p.m. peak-hour trips per day for this particular use. This is the grading range plan. And see the detention basin back here. And any questions about the design or anything of the basin, I'll refer you to Mr. Lee to speak to that. If you have questions about functionality and constructability and that kind of thing. They have provided construction plans and drainage calculations. We did have, as I mentioned, the county engineer has comments outstanding on the construction plans. They'll have a resubmittal on that. And that'll have to all be satisfied. There may be more comments. Sometimes it's not enough to have a couple of rounds of comments on these things with the county engineer before final approval. They will have to meet any requirements that we have in order for it to be signed. Our stormwater management requirements appear to be met on this item. They do show reductions in off-site runoff, pre versus post, and water quality requirements appear to be met. Stormwater maintenance and inspection agreement has been provided. That may be recorded with the register of deeds. We have noted Mr. Belcher's comment previously. There were some comments about the inspection cycle, I believe, on the template that we have. Our template is in the policy, and so we will, when these come through for reporting, we'll be making sure that that gets addressed. We do all the comments on the before we report it. And they won't be recorded until after everything is in and we've approved it, the bond is done. And again, this is in the zone A floodplain, they're not supposed to build anything in the floodplain. So the lot is in the floodplain, the construction is not. This is taken from the drainage report, which basically describes how they're meeting. There's 1.1 acres of impervious surface. 1.1 acres of impervious surface. Pre versus post is being decreased. Runoff reduction requirement is 80%. And so 82.6% is being met. And so what that's talking about, that's a water quality thing where 80% of the suspended solids have to be removed from the runoff that comes out of the first inch of rainwater that falls on the site. They're showing pretty significant reductions in pre versus post here for the outfall that this property has. Very, very significant numbers. Again, I'll refer you to the design engineer if you have questions about that. This is that LID spreadsheet. It's in the packet. I just included here to show it. Basically, they put the numbers. It's very, very engineering and technical, but they have to show out there meeting water quality requirements with the proposal. Landscaping, parking, lighting. Again, no internal buffer yards. There are some internal landscaping items that they're showing. This is a it's not industrial, but it's not, it's not, it's not residential, it's not Cool Springs either, you know what I mean? And so it's not necessarily something that has a whole lot of landscaping required. They kind of want to keep it open and natural to the extent possible. The county does as well. Parking requirements do appear to be met for the use. There are minimal parking for the number of employees. They have turned in a volumetric lighting plan. Huge lot, again, 10 acres is a big lot for something like this, and so no off-site glare or anything depicted on that plan. You see the landscape plan, you see the landscaping along the road frontage that we're proposing to do. scheduled within that water quality basin as well. Public water is to be provided by White House Utility District, properties to be served by septic. So they have turned in a septic soils map. I'll come back to that slide. That's the septic soils map for this lot, showing this is the septic soils area. Good bit of discussion. Mr. Straw had a good bit of questions last time. The rest of the we did as well about fire hydrants and that kind of thing, what would need to be done. And so what White House Utilities is saying with this is they've got a new water availability letter that they've provided at the applicant's request dated May 5th of this year. And so there's there's a 12-inch main here along Scott Parker Road. And there's essentially they're going to have to construct, to replace 1,800 feet of 4-inch water main, 8-inch pipe, and connect that in. So in order to get the hydrant to work, that's the new line they're going to have to do. And so
1,800 feet.
So we do have that as a condition of approval on this one that installed. Utility plan here, just showing septic connections and other stuff. Relatively straightforward. Septic soils map, which I already showed you, photometric lighting plan. Signage, as I mentioned, there is a sign depicted. Before they put that sign in, they will need to fill out a sign permit application with the county. This is pretty much what the building's going to look like. Again, like I said, it's not Cool Springs, but it's for what this is, construction, sales, and services business in the county. It's got the weird area and that kind of thing. It's generally been acceptable type of structure.
The road on the building, sheet metal would be good.
Of course, there's thousands of those in the county, pole barns and that kind of thing. Comp plan, this area is shown in the rural place type, as we talked about, that was mentioned going back to the rezoning. Outstanding county engineer comments. There's questions about the tar chip surface for the ADA spots. Those will probably need to be concrete. Labeling contours, some other engineer type questions, details needed, that kind of thing. But as you see, those are relatively minor comments that they just need to be addressed. And they'll get those addressed. And Marshall may look at the plans again when they turn back in and have more comments. That's just the way it goes. We're not obligated to approve it until everything is addressed. And if this body has any additional comments or anything on anything in the plans that we've asked that you see in there, feel free. We'll make sure to get those incorporated as well. So next steps, following the approval of this site plan by the planning commission, and the final review process by the county engineer, that gets stamped by him, and I stamp it on behalf of this body as the secretary. Once they get the plans approved, they'll schedule a pre-con meeting with the county staff. Also, like this, will likely be a field review with the county stormwater manager and the county engineer. Once we get the state permits, then they can start getting county permits. So that'll be a notice of coverage, because this is going to start over an acre. An ARAP if needed. I don't know what we need for this one for the next item on the agenda, if it will. And then that septic permit. Once they get those in hand, then we can start issuing our permits. So they can start with zoning, drive connection, building permits, and they can start building this thing. We do require zoning compliance certificate for whoever's going to occupy the structure as well. And so Mr. Chairman, the example motions on the screen. The example motion one to approve this item for Scott Park BD track 2 contingent upon, I'll just run through these real quick. Construction plans must obtain approval of the county engineer. Land disturbance permit must be obtained prior to the initiation of grading activities. Those state permits I mentioned shall be obtained prior to the issuance of our permits. No building construction shall commence until a building permit is obtained from the county. All applicable code requirements shall be met. and zoning compliance form, as I mentioned, sign permit. And then lastly here, all water line improvements required and noted by White House Utility District in order to provide a fire hydrant shall be conducted by the applicant prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And so what that means is we'll hold the CO until the hydrant's in. Yeah. And, the two motions are to not deny it. We don't have any grounds that I noted that for denial or to defer if you need additional information. As I mentioned, Mr. Leaf is in attendance.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak on it?
No, sir. Nobody's on.
Nobody's on. Okay. I have one question and then we'll open up to the commission. That flood zone A, that does not run year round, does it? That creek?
You know, I don't know. I'd have to defer. I've never walked it. I don't know if it's a perennial stream. Mr. Leaf, do you know the perennial stream?
No, I think that's going to be pretty much sure.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a pretty good. I mean, if there was a hot August, it might dry, but I think you're going to find water most of the time.
Okay, I'm looking at it and it's drier there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might get out there at some point in time, that'd be dry, but I think for the most part, you're going to find water more times than not.
Okay. All right, any questions from any of the planning commissioners? Go ahead, Rob.
Mr. Booth, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that these are very detailed plans. Yes,
Thank you.
very detailed. I appreciate that. The only issue I'd like to bring up is the water capacity. I noticed that the letter I'm looking at here in front of me is different from the letter that I looked at from the month before. I don't know if we have to go back to the notes, but I was told by your representative, I believe it was a female, that was here last month. And I believe she may have misspoke, or maybe she might be.
No, I think I know where you're going, and I can explain what's happening.
Well, since you know what you want to go ahead, you want me to go ahead and continue, or you just want to go ahead and explain?
I can explain if you
Okay,
if it's about the capacity.
I'm gonna let you answer the question before I ask the question.
Feel like what?
All right, so you go ahead and answer.
So I know-
I'm gonna ask the question.
Sure, when we had the rezoning, and maybe some of you guys remember it was Straw, I think you were on the body at the time this was being rezoned. We approached White House Utility District about getting fire flow on the line. And Josh, can you pull the letter back up that shows the rendering that Pat did? Go, right there. Is there a way to zoom in on the lines? If it's not, I think we can see it. Okay, I think this is good. So there's a 6-inch line you see right there, one of the ones, Scotty Parker, that's in front of our property. And then it turns into a 12-inch line right just past Brazier Lane. So there is, White House Utility District has a pump station that's not shown very clearly on this. It's right there just north of Brazier Lane. So the 6-inch AC line, that asbestos cement is not a very good water line. I mean, it's brittle, but they have little to no pressure in that line right there. So when we made the request to White House Utility District for fire flow, the original response was based on pulling that fire flow off that 6-inch AC water main, and there's not enough pressure in it. Now, just past that Brazier, there's a pump station that increases the pressure, and that's why it increases to a 12-inch main there. So we went back to Pat, and I said, hey, the planning commission really wants a fire hydrant. Is there any way that we can do this? And he went back and revisited it. So what we're having to do is go beyond the pump station, and that's where that 8-inch line is going to tie into and run down Brazier Lane. So not only are we going to be pulling the fire service off of that new 8-inch main, running it across, that's where Pat wants us, or Pat, that's where White House Utility District wants us to also pull the water services from. So they're not even letting us get water service off the 6-inch. And the fire hydrant will be a private hydrant, so they'll make us install a 6 or 8-inch meter or 6-inch meter. And once it gets past the meter, it's all private. But there will be hydrants and they will have flow. So she didn't really misspeak last time. She was speaking based on what White House had told us originally with the availability request.
hear that, and that answers part of the
Okay.
question. That's the discrepancy, and I got that. So, I called the White House Utility District today. I happened to be able to get in touch with them pretty quick.
Okay.
And, they concluded that, that you guys can have domestic water taps, but without the improvements, they cannot have fire protection for the county's requirements of the minimum safety requirements. I don't see where there is going to be a pump upgrade. Now, I got it with the 8-inch line, I've got that. But I have concern about the private, you put in a private hydrant, I'm not too sure you have to have a minimum safety requirements. But I don't think this commission's into private hydrants. I think we're into public hydrants that can be used for safety purposes. I still think that it doesn't state in here, based on the reply I got, there's still a problem with the 500 gallon per minute, 20 PSI, minimum, 14.
That's not what Pat's letter states.
Well, Pat's letter, this letter's quiet about all that, see? This letter doesn't address, this letter I'm looking at today does not address the failure to meet or meeting the minimum pressure or safety requirements. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying that the 4-inch line's got to be replaced with an 8-inch line. I don't even see anywhere in here, well, maybe, you might have, does it even have the word hydrant in the letter? I don't believe so. So, this letter that we're looking at today, dated May 5, doesn't even address the discrepancy that was this.
So, yeah, what you're not seeing with this letter is what we requested to White House Utility District. I know I don't have that with me tonight, and if you don't want to take my word on it, I'll have to get it. But we did request what the county asked us, which is 500 gallons a minute at 20 PSI. And that was our request to the White House Utility District, and this is their response back to us, in a sense saying, in order to get what we requested, this is what we're going to have to do.
And so it does, there is a note here about how they have to connect that allows them to install a new fire service, basically, within the site.
So you're right.
That is the only mention that.
The letter does not detail what we requested, but that's something that we see on our end, and I can get that for you. Get that
No, I'm
to
just,
Josh.
Josh should take care of that.
But we did request 500 gallons a minute at 20
Yeah,
PSI.
and I don't think they can provide that right now. That's a significant upgrade that was.
Well, this is,
identified in the prior.
this is a significant upgrade right here. It's running 1,800 feet of 8-inch main north of the pump off the 12-inch. So,
Yeah, but here's the deal. It don't matter if you push a 4-inch or 8-inch, okay? If you're not meeting the minimum requirements of 4-inch pipe without an upgrade to pumping, you're not going to acquire that with 8-inch PVC. I mean, hydraulic, simple hydraulics there. If you can't acquire the minimum pressure with 4-inch line without pump upgrades, you're not going to get it with 8-inch line.
certainly, I don't want to argue hydraulics, even though I have no basic reading.
I'm not an engineer
So,
like you
the
are.
4-inch line can supply the pressure, but not the flow. It's too small to do the flow. So upgrading from the 4 to the 8 allows it to supply the flow. The pressure's already there with the pump.
Okay. Okay. You're the engineer, I'm not.
And it's not just me, this is what's
We just
coming.
gotta make sure that, that's all I'm doing, just making sure.
And I can
that
appreciate
that's
that.
covered, and that's it. I mean,
But this is coming not just, I'm not saying that it's doing it. This is White House Utility District saying that based on their model, installing that 8-inch line can give us 500 gallons a minute at 20 PSI. The private hydrant will still have to be constructed to the state's minimum standards, which is 6-inch main. And it'll still be just like it was public. We don't have the option to do public hydrants in White House's district.
Okay, I don't know.
They're not. They meter fire suppression. So
I'm just saying.
for developments, they do.
I'm just saying that all the fire hydrants we have in the county there's a lot of them that are out there that doesn't meet the standard.
Oh, no doubt, yes, sir, they do.
And
They
they're
don't.
not addressing it, so as long as we get something that says when this is done, that Josh can look at it and say, hey, this satisfies the requirement that he has, man, that's great.
And I can ask White House to amend the letter to put that on public record.
I think Josh probably wanted that prior, you know, I mean,
That's
because when this was approved, there was no question at all. There was not even an issue of water pressure or fire on the rezoning. That was just a rezoning change. So see, that was a new issue. It wasn't even part of the equation, but now it becomes part of the equation. And the reason I bring it up, and like I said, you got excellent, excellent. But the reason I bring it up is because I saw something different last month than what I'm seeing now.
You are.
And I'm just bringing it up.
No, you are. We're not trying to deny that.
That's all.
It was based on the request and how White House responded off that 6-inch line. And that's why he's saying, White House is saying we can't tie it to the 6. The 6 doesn't have the pressure. It doesn't pick up the pressure until it gets past that pump station. Because we had a project, Mr. Straw, that we presented to this body that was north of this. Josh, if you recall, Mr. Klein, you might recall. It was the rezoning over on the highway, the garage door company. We have a letter from White House that said that has fire flow. So I even questioned White House, how does this have fire flow and we don't down here? And it was explained to me, the pump is what supplies the pressure and the flow, and we're not past the pump yet right here. So that pump is just right there at the north of Brazier Lane. So everything north of this area has fire flow, and if the county wanted to go put hydrants out there. But everything south of this is not.
Thank you, that's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Judge.
To piggyback a little bit on Ron's point, it does say in here, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand this aspect of it, that this new 1,800 foot of upgraded line is going to require easements.
Yes, sir.
And maybe this is a question for Josh, I don't know. Are those easements something that the county can automatically obtain, or is this something that the private properties have to grant?
Mr. Lee can correct me if I'm wrong, but different utilities handle different ways. With Portland Utilities, typically the developers got to do all that by themselves. But with White House Utilities handle it, is they handle easement acquisition. And so those any easements that need to be acquired, that process will be handled by White House Utilities, but it'll be paid for by the developer. Correct.
All right. Also, let's see. In your response to Josh's May 7th memo, noting things that needed to be corrected or added, number 8 was the location of the spigot, and your response was, or your company's response was, it'll need confirmation with the MEP drawings. I'm a little confused by confirmation as opposed to coordination, in that if you're telling us that's where the spigot's going to be, then that's where the spigot should end up being, and it needs to be coordinated with the MEP and not confirmed with the MEP. Maybe I'm focusing too much on semantics.
I don't mind to change the verbiage to coordinate. A lot of the reasons what we get into with on the civil side of things, doing site plans, the MP&E plans haven't even been done yet. They're not going to be done until the site plan's prepared. So there's always this tug of war between, well, what size water line service do we need? Well, I don't know. That comes from how many toilets you're going to have in there, how many sinks you're going to have in there. Are you using flush valve toilets or are you using regular toilets? And so a lot of times I've gotten into this with contractors. They'll bid out based off what's on my plan as a site plan. But by the time the fire line design's done, and by the time the MP&E design's done, they've got a different line size on there. So that's why we try to cover ourselves and note, confirm or coordinate with the MEP plan, so that if they wind up changing something, or if the owner sees somewhere, I want one over here, I want one over there, then, hey, we should have coordinated that
Yeah.
So I don't mind changing the
Yeah.
verbiage on that.
And once again, my point is, because it needs to be within a certain footage of the vegetation that's being installed, its location is somewhat important.
It is, and again, so we could change that verbiage so that the mechanical, plumbing, electrical engineer also consults with our plan to make sure they're getting the spigots and the water lines run where they need to be run to.
Okay.
So I can change that verbiage, there's no big deal.
Okay. Exhibit B, the long-term maintenance plan and inspection checklist, and Josh, you mentioned this, that they maintain 3 years of records, but the PE only has to come out to the site and review it every 5 years. Once again, if he wants to see 5 years worth of records, he might not, because they only are required to keep 3 years. And I think you mentioned you guys were gonna make that change.
Yeah, we're in the process of updating or working on updates to the stormwater resolution, that kind of thing. The maintenance inspection agreement is actually an appendix to our stormwater resolution. It's
Okay.
maintenance used in text, it's in the document right now.
Yeah, okay,
But I think we have the ability to tweak that if we need to.
okay. Next on sheet S1, this goes to, once again, Josh's letter, or your response to Josh's letter of corrections and additions that need to be made. Note 2 reads that the property is zoned RR, rural residential. And you stated in your response that it had been corrected. Obviously, it hadn't been corrected. So,
I'll make sure that gets done.
and to go along with that, Josh, for you, the survey that it's based on is a year and a half old now, approaching maybe 2 years old. I don't know whether there's any statute or limitations, because things can change on this lot. I doubt it. I drove by, looked at them, but I don't know whether that may be something for us to think of in the future, that if something isn't taken care of within a certain time frame, resurveying is required and things.
So the city of Hendersonville, if you want an example, they require a survey to be within 5 years of submittal.
Okay.
That's the only municipality in the county that really has a timeline on how fresh the survey needs to be. And that's a good idea.
Way things are changing now,
That's a good idea.
5 years is way too long.
If y'all decide you want to do something like that, Hendersonville has, when we turn in the site plan to them, the survey has to be within 5 years.
Yeah, okay. Sheet C2 has some, what I believe, some items that a layer wasn't turned off with regard to the storm sewer structures. They're still shown on the drawing, no tags, no identification or anything of that nature. Sheet C3, I believe, is the same thing. And also, let me just make a comment, and maybe this is just me, and I'm just too anal. But on the sheets that have contour lines, in my mind, elevation should be shown. And I realize on some of your sheets, you're showing the detention pond, the bio-retention pond and such, and you have elevation shown on the berms around that. But if something's on the drawing, it ought to be noted as to what it is, and it helps me, if nobody else, to follow with regard to the flow that's going to be created to send the water to those areas. So it helps me out tremendously if we have elevations on contour lines when contour lines are present on the drawings.
It helps me too.
Sheet C2, once again, I'm sorry, I'm backtracking. Didn't check all of these as I went. There's, on sheet C4, there's a tag on the sanitary sewer calling it out as a water service line. I mean, the water's serving a purpose, but I don't think that was the intent with the note. Sheet C 6.4, one of the notes mentions fuel trucks and fueling areas. And I'd like a little bit more of an explanation as to what type of activity concerning, fueling areas and fuel tanks are going to be on this site.
Erosion sheet there,
I'm sorry?
I believe that's an erosion sheet.
Sheet 6.4, C 6.4.
I think that's it.
And once I hear an explanation of the fuel and the fueling area, I also have to ask the question with tar and chip surfaces, whether or not those two items go together very well.
I can see right there. So the note you're referring to is on an erosion sheet, and that plays into the SWIP requirement, stormwater pollution prevention plan, and the note is in there during construction where they need to be fueling their equipment at, the dozers, the track hose, things of that nature. It's used for construction, not day-to-day operation.
Okay,
And then once the construction's done, that would not apply. That note would not.
okay. So that only applies to the construction phase
I'm
of the
trying to say
project.
this is where you need to set up a fueling station and not be fueling up all over the site and spilling diesel and spilling gas, and to keep that confined. That's what that's for.
Okay. And to,
TDEC through the
Yeah.
notice of coverage and SWIP process.
okay, okay. That explains that. Let's see.
And that's some standard verbiage that TDEC has created as well.
Yeah, well, my flags went up when I saw that. Sheet L is in Larry, 1, you have stormwater structures on the sheet, but you don't have a legend defining what those structures are. And once again, from my standpoint, each drawing should stand on its own unless it makes specific references to other drawings. So if there's an item shown on a sheet and there's no legend to define what it is, in my view, that's a oversight and should be corrected. And similar to the survey, Josh, this is another question towards you. With the trip generation and the traffic, and I realize that that's not something that's critical at all on this particular development, but the report is dated December of '23. Is there any sort of time limit on trip generation reports?
Not really, but I think if there's something, if something came along, like the new school or something like that opened up the road, where we felt like, hey, something fundamentally has changed in this area. So we probably want fresh numbers, the new, that come out the new accounts or something like that. For this particular one, I'm not aware of anything significant that's changed that would warrant that.
Okay.
If it was close, what I mean? If it came in at 95, what I'm saying? If it did 95 peak hour trips, versus 100.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If there was something, but when it's 8, and there's nothing that makes me think that it's much more than that today.
Yeah. Well, in other words, that's at your and maybe this commission's discretion.
Yeah, the county engineer discretion, and so, if there's something that's happened in the area that would warrant that, another one could get at it.
Yeah.
But I might be wrong, there might be some kind of some verbiage somewhere that requires it to be within a certain time or something like that. But, I'm a rule follower, exactly what that is, but I try my best as a government employee to have common sense. So that's hard to do, it's not easy to try.
Well, and I would add too, that if we had done a traffic study, then it would be wise to keep those updated.
Yeah,
We'd have to come up with how often you want those updated. Trip generations are based on usage, and those are not going to change no matter what the traffic counts are. Because that's just, what is the building used for, what's the site used for? There's a manual out there that says, this use has this many trips. And so if that book is ever updated, yes, but most likely trip generation's not gonna change. But if you had asked us to do a traffic study and we come in 5 years down the road, it's wise to ask them to be able to do it.
Just a few more. Let's see. Well, this will be easy. Sheet C, 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3, once again, have contour lines without elevations. And that's all I've got.
And I appreciate that because that's something that we're in the computer. We have those, we just click on that line and it tells us the elevation.
Yeah.
And so as designers, we sometimes overlook the fact that when we print things out, it's different than what we're used to seeing on the computer screen all day long.
I do have one other, and this is more of a curiosity question than anything else. On sheet C1, there's a statement about the paving and the drainage, note 1. It talks about riprap placement and getting it, and I'm not going to remember it verbatim, but something about you're required to do the riprap so that it's interlocked to the greatest extent possible, or something of that nature. How exactly is that
So
tested?
Yeah. So if you can, just Josh made me familiar with TDOT riprap classifications. So you got different riprap classes. And one of those is actually called to be hand placed. It's a 6-inch and under riprap, which you see common of a lot of projects. And so just, do they ever do it? No. They go out there with the skid steer or the bucket and just dump it, and then they smooth it around. But when we cover ourselves by putting that on there, to say, hey, go out there and hand place some of these places so that you make sure that it's not loose. Because when water runs over it, enough water can move a boulder the size of this table.
Yeah.
So that's why we're trying to cover ourselves, but not just go out there and throw riprap down on the ground. Even though in theory, or in practice, that's usually what happens.
Yeah. Is that something that you look at, Josh, at all, or Marshall, or anybody?
Yeah, that's your Marshall, but we're hand inspections of the hand placement of the riprap.
Yeah. Well, I understand that, and I understand the why of the statements there.
Yeah, what he said, I think, is there's some TDOT detail that's out there that says that's how you're supposed to do it.
I think it's class A riprap.
That's that common sense in government thing that I was talking about.
There are some things that we have in our plans that CYA.
Yes,
That's-
yes,
these notes are
believe me,
CYA.
I understand, I have them too.
Can I make a motion that we approve, number 1 with conditions? Are we good? Are you done, John?
Yes.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Issa. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, sir. Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
Mr. Issa?
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Straw?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
No.
Okay, so that was 4 yeses and 1 no.
Correct.
Okay. That passes. All right. Item number 2.
All right, so I can, I'm trying to move on my comments and think over that one. And so I can go detail on this one or not detail at all. I'll try to do that. So same project here, just a different parcel. This one consists of, you got 2 structures, you got type of, you look at this 15 hours, see if the bill, right here, on top of you got. It's 1 structure, 6,000 square foot storage built with associated parking. This one is the house, stout concrete and rustic. It's in this northern section up here. Overall plan. This is kind of gives you a layout here, set area back there behind the parking lot. Landscape, you see there is some pretty robust landscaping here along this buffer. We did get a good bit of comment on that during the rezoning. Boundary survey. This is the
site plan, you see the, this is the structure, again, it's 60 by 100, so 6,000 square foot shop and office. Sign here, however. Scotty Parker Road situation is the same as what we talked about previously, trip generation report. I think I've actually got that wrong. It's 14 peak hour trips per day. Oh, for this track 3. Peak hour trips per day. Drainage plan, you see the detention basin here. One item here that does have special attention that's going to be given to it by my office. Marshall and I have talked about it. It's this culvert right here, and so this is a significant jurisdictional stream here, so there will be a neighbor out, and this will need to be sized appropriately. There's county engineer comments that have been provided related to this. There'll probably be some back and forth on how this is going to be placed and how it's going to be sized and all that with Marshall. And so that is one different thing that is different about this one versus the other. They have provided everything that we needed as far as drainage calculations and construction plans, stormwater maintenance agreement and all that. Water quality and quantity requirements have clearly met our 2 outfalls on this property, and they are showing a significant reduction for outfall 1 particularly, and for outfall 2 as well. There's a reduction that's being accomplished. There's a type 2 buffer that's been provided on the periphery, the outside periphery of this project. Parking and lighting requirements appear to be met. Here's that landscape plan. The utilities and fire protection, same thing, White House utilities. We have that same condition of approval incorporated for this one. We're going to be living by that same condition of approval. You guys did basically the same thing for track 1 last month. And so the project's going to have these fire improvements completed before anybody can move in. So we plan set the tools map for this track. See the septic area shown here. Lighting plan, sign plan, architecture for the building. Plan information. Outstanding county engineer comments. We did have several questions about driveway radius. Good bit of comment here related to this storm event that's being accommodated with this culvert. We require if it's over 500 cubic feet per second for a 50-year storm, then we do require a flood set to be done. It's got to be able to top or pass the 100-year flood event without topping the driveway, so that does show that there's dollar protection items, that kind of thing. Again, there will be some back and forth with the county engineer on this one before it gets approved. There may be a flood study that's going to need to be done by the applicant as well in order for that work to get the approval that it needs.
The one you were talking about earlier.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For the driveway. That's right. Let's make sure I saw it. Oh, there it is. Right there.
This, now, the pad looks like it's elevated to 6 to 8 feet higher than the existing natural ground. Is that part of?
Well, they are showing a finished floor elevation there. I don't know what decisions they made as far as structure or anything. I'll have to defer to the applicant on the design there.
Go ahead and keep going. Yes, that later.
Next steps, following the approval of this site plan, stamping of the construction plan that needs to do with pre-app, and then they get the state permits. Once they get that done, they can pull in the permits. Example motions on the screen. I do believe that these are all the same conditions of approval that we had on the last time. So I don't think there's anything
That, the elevation of the pad is quite high compared to the natural ground. Is that to accommodate the flood?
Can you pull that sheet up, Josh? While he's pulling that up, I'd say we have applied for the ARAD permit for that stream crossing. I think, that's in correspondence with, TDEC on that this week. So if you see this right here, this is the roughest lot out of all of them. I know this is the smallest site, but it's the roughest because of the stream crossing. You have the part of it. Okay. So you have a very narrow ridge line right here,
Yeah.
and it drops off. And that is filled in, so it probably is really, a lot of field compared to this down here, but not a lot compared to right here.
Right.
Although this was the smallest, so not big enough for this pad, that's why all this field's coming in. This is gonna wind up being our most expensive, probably a lot to grade in, to try to bring material over here. Fortunately, they've got 40 acres to get material off of. But the reason why it's filled in so high is because we don't have much of a flat spot, just a small little narrow ridge line right there. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 9 or 10 feet of elevation difference from the parking lot here to the parking lot back here.
And that falls pretty hard at the back. Is that a 2-to-1 slope?
These 3-to-1 slopes.
3-to-1.
But we're trying to avoid, this is the soil area right here. We're getting into it a little bit, so we're losing some of it, but we still have enough to cover a bathroom in the office. And this is your floodplain line right here, so we're staying out of it with everything.
Josh, when you go to the water line, I was confused about something. The green ball chain configuration what is that?
That's the pathway of the new main.
The new main.
Yeah, so there's an existing 4-inch that runs down Brazier.
Right.
And what White House is having us do, we're having to run enough 8-inch main to get to the frontage of our property, which this is the property line right there. And then we own all the way down to here.
So what is the straight line
Right here.
That 8-inch main?
Okay, this is 8-inch, but it's tying in below, the pump station's up here, it's tying in below the pump station, so it does us no good. Can't tie into that part.
Could it have not been, instead of running that part 98 to the 6, could that not have been run?
This could have been in the ground for the last 40, 50 years.
Oh.
And then they put the pump station in up here.
Yeah.
So I don't know the timing of this, and I know from the layperson, like, hey, you got an 8-inch, why you running a new 8-inch? The reason is, all this is tied in south of that pump station. And we've got to get north of that pump station to get the flow and the pressure.
Yeah, it just seems like you can run a few hundred feet.
No, you would think maybe we could just take this and tie it in up there, but then you start getting into pressure zones, and all of this right here is in a different pressure zone for White House. They can't mix and match it.
Okay. I was just curious about that.
No, I wish that we could have just jumped over here and tied it in.
It's a lot, 1,800 feet of space, a lot.
It's quite a bit. But the TriStar Excavation is one of the companies doing this, and they can offset costs by doing it themselves.
Okay. Those are all.
But that's the new line right there. I know this is a confusing thing, but everything hinges around that pump station. We've got to be north of that pump. And all these other lines tie in south of that pump station.
Okay. Pressure is not really different.
It is.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? One.
I'll make this easy.
You probably have a lot of the same on this.
All of the same comments from the last one on this one.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Holmes. Sorry. Go ahead, Kathy, you can roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Edsel?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
No.
Mr. Straw?
Yes.
Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
And Commissioner Holmes?
And that's 4 yeses and 1 no. Passes. Item 3, as Josh said earlier, was being deferred. And so we'll move on to item 4, summary of administrative.
Yes, sir. So this is just the minor class that we, class minutes and that kind of thing that we've had in the last month. Nothing really significant to note. Director's update, I don't have much of anything. I do have one, I want to be able to get it out to the car, but I didn't let it. I kind of talked about it tonight, I could tell back by the bottom, and we're sitting back there, we got here. And so, with the rainfall and all that stuff, but I do have what I guess you might call a homework assignment for everybody, and I can email this to you guys as well. So, we worked on, this is complicated stuff, so we worked on the plan vision statement a while back, I don't know if y'all heard that, but it's been a while, we've been through a lot since then, it's been a whole lot of work, since we talked about that. I want to make sure everybody's still okay with that vision statement. And on the back side, goals, basically these are like super high level, like big picture goals, taken from the plan vision statement, right? And what I'd like to see, if possible, when you guys know what to do it, let me know, and you don't have to email it back to me if you happen to be at the office or something, or drop it off or whatever. What are 2 ways that you guys feel like we can, well, and these are like policy recommendations, right? These are big picture changes, things like that. What are some things that we can do to better affect rural preservation? What are the things that we can do to improve the quality of the growth that we see in the county? What are the things that we can do to improve the quality of public services and facilities that we have in the county? And what are ways that we can do, better do natural and historic preservation? You know, that might be natural and historic preservation, of course, historic relatively simple to understand. Home structures and that kind of stuff, but natural would be, you know, like slope protections for steep areas of the county, floodplain, protecting the floodplain from encroachment, or even development in the floodplain, or on really steep slopes, that kind of stuff. Those are all very like rational things that you can do to restrict development in ways that have real life safety implications, right? So, you know, we're not taking a sledgehammer to things, but saying we want to really closely regulate development in the floodplain. That's exactly what the federal government, the state government, and the people that responded to our survey want you to do. You know what I mean? And so, what are some ways that we can do that? And that doesn't have to be super specific. If it's more than 2, if you've got 10, if you've got 1, or whatever, and this just gets some additional feedback from you guys, food for thought. If nothing else, we can talk about it next month. But like I said, you can fill these out, you can email it to me, you can bring it by, you can call me and tell me, and I'll write it down. But I just want to hear from you guys on what you guys feel like some specific objectives and some big picture goals that we could strive for with this process. And this is all obviously intended, we're working on the comp plan behind the scenes, we're doing a lot of stuff in my office. With regard to text and drafting and that kind of stuff right now. So I'm hesitant to give any timelines at this point, but it's coming along internally. And so right now we're at the point where we want to get some more specific goals and feedback and that kind of thing, and then incorporate those into the text. And at some point in the future, bring me a draft plan.
Okay.
That's what we're working for right now.
So we got our homework.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody. This meeting is over.
Beat the weather, it's coming.
Is it coming?
Oh, it's here.
I think we had a little small cell real quick. We got about 10 minutes.
Is that right?
That's what it looks like. Did Cindy talk to you today? What? Okay. Just get with her tomorrow about HTW. Call HTW. No, there's somebody. HTW is what I'm calling it, Calvin's. We have, every project has. We noticed that. It's when it starts, when I'm doing the initial consultation, and then it evolves to something different.
It'll have the property owner name.
Right.
wife's maiden name.
Just who calls first, and then it gets stuck, and then it changes. It's the
Road name, always road name.
y'all can talk about it.